Hi, Dina Wakley here, and I'm here to tell you about 3 of my favorite products: black gesso, white gesso, and clear gesso. I always say gesso is underwear for your art. You can go commando, but something might not be right. So we're gonna learn about 3 gessos, especially clear gesso, in this video. I'm excited to tell you about one of my favorite products in the Dina Wakley media line, and that is gesso. I get so many questions about gesso, and I know it can be a little confusing. And what I always tell people is gesso is personal. You either like it or you don't like it, and I like it because the bottom line is I like the way my art looks if I gesso first. So I would say I gesso 90% of the time. And there are 3 different gessos in the line. We have regular white gesso, white acrylic gesso. It's probably my most used. We have clear gesso, and we're going to do a little demo with the clear here just in a second. So that will be transparent. And then we have black. The great thing about the black gesso is it has a chalkboard finish and it dries really, really fast. White pen on black gesso, oh my gosh, it's incredible. Now remember, all of these products are available in 3 sizes. You can get the larger jars. This is the most economical way to buy your gesso. So if you use gesso a lot, I think that the big jars are great. This is what I use at home, the big ones. The 2-ounce tubes. So the jars are 4 ounces. You can also do a 2-ounce tube of all of these different products. They're great as well. Always remember that when you feel like your tube's empty, make sure you snip the top of that tube out, and you still have quite a bit of product in there that you can dig out with your brush. And then you can also get the gessos in the new little 1-ounce bottles. So up to you how you want to buy them. If you have never tried gesso, you might want to get the small ones and see if you like your art when you use it. They're pretty handy. Let's talk about clear gesso. So white is my most used. I use it as a foundation primer for everything. It will seal the paper. It will make it so that you use less paint. Your paint will move around and act properly. It will be the right color when you use it, because sometimes paper can change the color of your paint, right? And so you kind of prime and it's a good foundation, and it's also a little bit of insurance, because if you really don't like what you did, and if your paint is still wet, and if you have gesso down there, you can get it off with a baby wipe. So in a way, gesso's insurance too. So regular white gesso, you slap it down, looks great. But then let's say you've got this new Dina Wakley Media Journal. And the journal has cool surfaces like craft, like burlap, like canvas. Now, if you've got this beautiful off-white canvas, and then I slap white gesso down there, bye-bye pretty ecru canvas. Why would you want to put white gesso on that canvas when you want to keep that natural color to come through? So same with the craft. I think the craft is incredible. It's one of my favorite surfaces in the journal. It's thick, and the color of the neutral craft makes all of the acrylic paints pop. But why would you put white gesso on it? You're just covering up all that gorgeous craft, right? And so clear gesso is a good candidate for both of those substrates, because if I know I'm going to be putting a lot of product on here, tons of acrylic, maybe I'm doing a face painting, maybe I'm just, every stamp I own is going to end up on here, and I know I want to really reinforce this craft and I want to make it nice and strong, then a coat of clear gesso on this craft is a really good idea. Okay, same with this canvas. Now, if I'm going to do a lot of painting on this canvas, and I know that I'm really going to be loading the mediums and the products on the canvas, a coat of clear gesso on the canvas will really seal it and make it awesome. I also find that the clear gesso shrinks the canvas less than the white. I'm not sure why that is, but I have better luck with the clear gesso on the canvas anyway. Also, Bible journalers, people that want to do paintings and do strengthening to scrapbook paper. Anytime you have text or something like that you don't want to cover up with gesso, but you want it to have some grit and you want it to have strength because you're going to be doing lots of mixed media techniques on it, then clear gesso is your gal here, because clear gesso is going to protect this paper. It's going to seal it. It's going to make it strong. It's going to give me that insurance that I need, and it's going to make it so I can do a painting here, but it's also not going to cover up the background. So if you're Bible journaling, you can put your clear gesso down. You can still see your text. Here's a piece of book paper. If I'm going to do a painting on this later, I just want to take a little clear gesso, just taking it right out of that 4-ounce jar with my brush, and I'm just doing a nice thin coat. Now, if your paint Now, if your paper gets wrinkly, here's why. When you start painting paper, the little fibers of that paper start to absorb, and they might buckle a bit. And so if you don't want it to be wrinkly, or if you want it to be less wrinkly, because really, can you ever really get it smooth? Not really. You kind of have to give up that idea. But if you flip it over, if you gesso the back as well, so that you have the same absorption on the front as you have on the back, you'll find that it will kind of flatten out. It won't be quite as bubbly for you. That's true for journal pages too. People will be using a journal and they'll be like, oh, my journal's wrinkly. I'm like, well, it won't be when you get to the next page, because then the paper fibers on both sides will have absorbed. And it made it a little bit darker, but by the time that's dry, it's not going to be obtrusive in any way. It's going to be negligible, that, you know, any sort of darkness that happens. And now when that is dry, I'm going to be able to, you know, paint a face, stamp and really carefully paint images, and this paper is going to stay nice and strong, and my paint is going to not stir up the paper pulp. Remember how I said before in classes, if you've been with me, I'll tell people if you stir up paper pulp too much, you get that mushy look because the paper is starting to come up. If you gesso first and then you're going to do a lot of painting, then you're not going to stir the paper up because the paper's sealed, right? This is just such a pretty piece. I think that needs to go right on the craft, don't you think? Look how pretty that is. A little bit of gel medium and a little bit, that right on the craft I think would make a wonderful foundation. I'm going to set that aside to dry though, and I'm going to turn to this craft. So this is a background that I had started before, and there's no gesso there on the craft because I knew I wasn't painting much. That was a little tiny bit of paint. That was a paint put out in a bead, and then I took these paint combs and I just kind of smooshed it out. You could even see the line of the paint comb right there. And so that background was just so simple and quick that I felt like I didn't need gesso. But if I were going to do a lot of painting, then gesso might be helpful. But like, let's say I did this and I hated it. Now, to be clear, I don't hate this. I really like this background, but I want to show you how cool that black gesso looks. So like, take something that you did that you've overdone, and look, we all do that. I still overdo things and think, oh, Dina, why did you do that? Black gesso will save your life, okay? So a little bit of black gesso, and I'm going to come along and I'm going to reduce and get rid of most of the offensive areas that are bugging you. Just say bye-bye to. And then when this gesso is 100% dry, so give it a day or so, you're going to take your Dylusions white paint pen and you're going to prime it real good, shake it real good, and then you're going to get your pen, your white paint pen, in this black gesso color field, and you're going to doodle and you're going to write words and you're going to make polka dots, and oh my gosh, it is amazing. So black gesso, it's a little bit of insurance, and look how quickly that's drying. It's a rainy day here at Ranger, and there's a lot of humidity in the air, and this black gesso is the quickest drying product in my line. It's going to dry matte, okay, so you're not going to get a gloss finish like you would get from black acrylic, because I mean, could you do that with black paint? Well, sure, but this is going to dry matte. It's going to dry gritty. What makes gesso, including with the clear, is that there's going to be grit, and that grit is going to make it so the paint sticks right. So now if I want to come back later, I want to do scribble sticks on this black color field, they'll work great. It'll grab that stick as well. So I hope this gave you some ideas for clear gesso and for black gesso as well. And my all-time favorite, of course, white gesso. You can't go wrong with white. I don't know what I did with it. I threw it over here. You can't go wrong with white gesso. So 3 indispensable gessos. Have fun playing.